What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today we are doing part two with Kevin Sutherland, who was on last week's episode, telling the first part of his harrowing story. And we let off at a certain point that we're going to pick up today. But if you didn't listen to that, go back and listen to it. Kevin's actually a survivor of childcare home abuse, and that was mainly the topic that we talked about last time. We got a little bit into what we're going to talk about today. So if you're just tuning in, feel free to listen to this episode, then go back and listen to that one also. And then connect with Kevin. He's absolutely amazing. Support him in any way that you can. This takes a lot of courage to sit here and talk about this. And Kevin's actually going to express some things today that I'm personally thrilled about because they're topics that I haven't talked about a lot on this podcast. And they're really important issues when it comes to discussing and having the discussion of not just what abuse looks like when a victim is still in the system, but the after effects that go on years and years, possibly a whole lifetime in a lot of cases, after the abuse stops. And we as a society need to get better at recognizing what those side effects are from abuse, because very often in society, as you'll see listening to Kevin's second part of his story today, there's a lot of things and side effects that come from abuse that we as a society are blaming the survivor for, and we're not questioning how they got there to begin with. And Kevin's so brave for coming forth and talking about this because it's not easy. Imagine coming on a podcast and just talking about these really hard things in your life. It takes a lot of courage, and we have so much to learn from him. So I'd love if you guys could put away anything that you're doing. If you're driving, try to obviously pay attention on the road, but tune into what Kevin's saying and take notes in your head because you're going to learn a lot. And I'm just really honored to have him here today. So without further ado, thank you for being here with me today, Kevin.
Hi, thank you for having me. I honestly appreciate it so much. As I said, this is a really good place for me to just really speak about these issues that are important and need to be heard on like every level. So yeah.
Well, a lot of people thought it was really important too, because my last podcast that I posted on YouTube, you got so many views so quick that it literally broke my algorithm on YouTube. And my YouTube page got all messed up for an entire night and then part of the next day until I could fix it. And it stopped all the views, it deleted views. But thank everybody for listening because y'all blew me up and it was awesome. So I hope that all of you are back today listening, and please share this. Also share the last episode too, because it's just really important. And like I said, YouTube kind of messed it up. So help us out by getting the word out.
Yeah, definitely. Share.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of finished off with regards to we spoke about all the stuff that happened to me when I was in the care system and, how that really did just in blatant terms, just fuck me up. And then I was kind of just kicked out into society without any kind of life skills being instilled in me. And obviously I had just sort of started the blackmailing process just before I kind of left care. So that transition kind of just happened naturally, because obviously the blackmailing is tied in with the guy who was effectively blackmailing me and introduced me to these chat lines. And obviously there's been a lot of misreporting regarding the fact that I was apparently the one who set companies up and lured people in through putting advertisements in newspapers and magazines. None of that's true. That's how the company operated. I just went on and simply was like a user of that service. I never set that company up. And that makes it sound much more elaborate, as in when they're portraying me as a scammer. Yeah, I did do. There is a level of truth to it. In that sense, I did scam these guys out of money. There was blackmailing. I pled, guilty to it. Let's be honest. But the fact that there was this whole image put out that I'd set up my own company and all of that, it just makes it sound a lot more sinister, and it sensationalizes it in a sense of this guy's went away and really sort of sat down and thought about this, when that just never happened. I was, as I said, I think we did touch on it before, when I was in this guy's company and in his house, he was the one that was showing me these chat lines, and he was phoning them in front of me and had them on loudspeaker and whatever. And he had me in those positions of fear where I was like made to do sexual things with him in order to stay at his house instead of getting sent back to the residential school that I was in. And this was when I was only 14, 15 years old, that this is when this started, and then this is when this was going on. So yeah, the abuse happened then, and that was something that happened on more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This happened on so many occasions I couldn't put a finger on it. But that was just my choices and the position that I found myself in at that time in my life. That was just what it was. Like, if you want to stay here, you need to do this, you need to do that. And and I was a child, I just went along with it. And I think we did cover a good wee bit of this, Emma, before, didn't we, when we spoke about how the friend of mine that I conveyed in and told them a lot of like the abuse, supported me in going and reporting this guy to the police, and then ended up being friends with the guy, which is just so fucked up.
You want to walk us through that? I think you might have talked to me about that personally. I don't know if we actually covered that on the podcast part.
Yeah. That was a really fucked up part. So basically, I reported this guy when I was 17. So, I reported him for what had happened. I told them the truth. I told them a lot of stuff regarding like the situations that I found myself in with them, and the fact that that's where I was staying when I was running away from that residential school. So they had all of the reports and the times that I was missing, so they could kind of, connect it with that. There was a pattern of behavior that they could go, well, you were, missing at these points in your life. And I says, well, this is where I was staying. This was the guy who I was, with. So anyway, fast forward to, a couple of years later, when I was 17, I felt compelled to report it to the police because I recognised that as what it was. It was abuse, and I just felt like it needed, and I needed to let the police know. Also, because when I was with this guy, I'll always remember vividly, we went to the shops or a supermarket or whatever one day, and I remember a guy literally coming up to him, my abuser, and grabbing him by the throat, putting him up against a wall and saying to him, "Why do you keep teaching my little brother to wank?" And that stuck in my head because obviously in hindsight, looking back, this guy's clearly got form, and he's obviously done stuff to other people, because a guy wouldn't just come up to somebody when there's like public and cameras and people around and put him up against a wall and threaten him and be like, what the fuck are you doing to my little brother? So there's something going on there. And I told the police all that so that they could look in and see if there'd been other reports made, or maybe try and investigate who this guy was and stuff. And it wasn't like a big gap of time. The abuse went on when I was 14, 15. I got out of care when I was 16. I never seen my abuser after that point. And then I reported it, basically 3 years later. So there wasn't like a huge gap of time. The police did look into it, as far as I'm aware. They did go around and speak to him. And I think they detained him, took him in, questioned him, all the usual kind of process. And he obviously just denied it. He just denied. But the police obviously said, if anything comes forward in the future, or any other people come forward with the same claims, then we'll get in touch. This is fucking 14, 15 years later. That's never happened. He's still roaming the streets. I don't know whether he's doing exactly what he did to me, but I think he's definitely a paedophile. He's 100% a paedophile, because I also remember another weird thing as well. When I was in his house one day, he showed me something on his computer. It was like the old fucking, I don't know if you remember the old like iMac computers.
Oh yeah, that's really big ones.
Yeah. So he had one of them, and I can remember I was like, and remember he was always drinking, and he was getting me drunk, and I was just like thinking, oh, thank fuck I'm out that school. So I kind of felt like a level of freedom amongst this whole like fact that I'm getting groomed and I'm under this guy's control, and that any minute he's going to ask me to do something sexual to him that I do not want to do. He was fucking disgusting. He was like severely overweight, and like he could literally have just sat on me and I wouldn't have been able to move. So there was a physical power that was there as well, because like I do remember him grabbing me a few times when I did kind of say like, fuck this, I'm leaving and whatever, and I wanted to go out the door. And the house we were in as well, you could lock the door, and like you needed keys to unlock it. It didn't have like one of those little turn things. So when he locked his door, I was locked in. I was in a flat. We were like, up, it wasn't on the ground. So I was contained, and that was another thing as well. But I remember him once showing me something on his computer. It was so fucking weird. And it sticks in your head, because obviously these things do, for obvious reasons, because even as a child, you just know something's not right. He showed me like an image, and it was like of, I think it was like of Chinese children or whatever, and it was something sexual, and it had like a like some sort of object in it. I don't even want to say it was graphic. It was basically some sort of like porn or whatever. It wasn't a video, it was just an image. I told the police all that, and obviously emphasized that, you know, take away his laptops, take away his fucking phone, check his, you know, his electronic devices and stuff. You know, you'll probably find something that will back up that this guy's that way inclined. They were very limited with their feedback and what they told me they'd done, other than the fact that they interviewed him, he denied it, they put the claims to him, they put the dates to him. You know, he couldn't get an alibi or corroborate that he was with anyone else at those times, because I think his mum had moved on, and yeah, she'd given him her house. She'd basically left him that house and moved in with somebody else or whatever. And I don't think it, to be honest with you, he wasn't really a popular, likable guy with a lot of friends. So I don't think there's anybody that would have stood up and says, oh no, I was with him during that entire duration in his life. This person is completely making it up. So it really was just a matter of my word against his. And when it comes down to that, it really is just like the fucking sake. It's just like throwing a dice. And I think they didn't want to, because I did say to them, I was like, why can you not just like press the charges, take it to court, and see who gets, see how it happens, see what happens in court. But I just think that the police had discredited me so much because they had a record of me, and this is pre-blackmail and all the press regarding, you know, all of that. They had a record of me absconding, and you know, I was a runaway. And to me, that's somebody that fits the profile and the criteria, is somebody who falls exactly into these situations. So if anything, that should have went in my favor, but I feel that went against me, because I do remember them bringing it up a couple of times, and the reasons why the CPS and stuff decided that there was insufficient evidence to bring that, you know, a case against them. And then this is the really just like completely fucked up, sickening part of this whole story. You've got to remember, when I was given these police reports, and I was sitting for a good few hours with separate different police officers and CID and whatever, and telling them about, you know, how this guy operated, you know, little things like what I told you, things that he had shown me, the phone calls, the chat lines, everything. I told them the whole lot. And I've got a friend sitting in with me, because they're like there as like my support and whatever, and he drove me there and drove me back and whatever to the police station. And he was a guy who eventually got involved in the blackmailing with me, because that's when the conversation opened up with him with regards to, you know, you're telling the police about all these chat lines, and you know, the fact he was phoning them up, and you know, talking about having sex with kids, and you know, wanting other guys to come round and basically like do stuff to you, which that part never did happen. But that was just, you know, we've established he was trying to instill fear in me, because he wanted me there to do things with him. And his power was, you're a runaway from care, you don't want to go back to care, so if you want to stay here, that's like your payment, basically. That's how I was paying my rent, effectively. It's so fucked up. So anyway, the guy who was a friend of mine decided to start asking me questions about the chat lines and stuff like that. And because I had already opened up to him so much and told him like that, which was like the biggest thing in my life at that point, you know, I felt comfortable telling them. I was like, look, listen, I'm going on these chat lines and I'm blackmailing people for money and stuff. And he jumped on that straight away and got right involved in it with me. And he was making, you know, a good fucking a few grand anyway, a lot of money. I can't put figures on it because it's all kind of like blurred and it's in the past and stuff, but he was making a lot of money for a short period of time. And then we basically had a falling out over, I don't think it was to do with money, but I think it was just a breakdown in our relationship. It was like, you know, I was going one way, he was going another way, whatever reason, we fell out. And I always remember him sending me this big massive email. I don't know if I've still actually got it, saying that he was going to give Queen's evidence against me, which basically means that he gets immunity from prosecution if he decides to tell the police that, you know, what I had told him that I'd been doing, which was criminal, yeah, but failed to mention he'd been doing it. but he was going to say, he said to me in his email that he was going to tell them that he was involved and he would be a witness against me, and everything that I had told them about what my abuser had done to me in respects to how I found out about these chat lines, he actually told the police that I had made all of that up and it was a complete pack of lies. So that's like, that was the biggest first blow for me in like portrayal senses of like friendship terms. Like, when you convey in somebody who was supposed to be my best friend for the best part of maybe like 2.5 years at the most, and he practically lived with me, to be honest with you. He practically lived in my house. He was constantly with me, because you know, we were making the same kind of money, we were going out, we were doing the same things, like we were living in each other's pockets. You know, he moved on, I moved on, we fell out. I get this big threatening email and stuff. I obviously felt like, or thought at the time, he wasn't going to do it. He likes to think, I think he likes to take credit for the fact that he thought he was the one that kind of brought me down and got me convicted, but that wasn't the case. The police were already investigating me, probably because I had told them a lot to do with the blackmailing stuff, to do with the chat line stuff anyway. So I was already under their kind of radar. But he likes to kind of think, well, at the time anyway, certainly in his email, he likes to think that he was the power and forces that brought me down. But none of that's what hurt me. What hurt me is the fact that he went away and started being friends with somebody who he knew was a paedophile, he knew had sexually abused me, and he then basically jumped ship and went from being like supporting and defending me to then going against me and supporting and defending the guy who abused me, and also to get it logged in his defense that any allegation that I had ever made against him was completely untrue, because apparently I had told him, oh, I'm going to make up all this lies about this guy, just for whatever fucking reason, I don't know, but that's what he said. So I think that was obviously after the police had decided not to pursue the case any further, but I think that's obviously put a black mark on my allegations against this person, because, you know, there's another individual out there who's saying that they spent a lot of time with me, and that I had completely made that whole thing up, which is just disgusting. And he'll get his karma for that. Like, anybody who aligns themselves with a paedophile or a sex offender, even if their motives are not their motives, or they're not intending on abusing kids or whatever, because I don't think he's that way inclined, which is what makes it even more fucking fucked up. I think, you know, as I said, it was just to get back at me and just to really fucking hurt me, because we had a falling out. But who has a falling out with somebody and then goes, oh, well, I'm going to go, you know, sit and chill and break breads with the guy who abused you as a kid? Like, that's just warped in my mind. That's twisted, it's warped. And it's to this day why I probably still have a lot of trust issues, and why I'll never mention my abuser's name. Not because I've got any fear or risk of being sued by this guy. I'd fucking blast his ass everywhere. But what's the point? You know, like, why this is my story. This is what's happened to me. There's so much more to me than just that, you know, that incident, those incidents that happened. But just, I could never, and still will never, be able to get my head around the fact that I broke down, they seen me in tears, he escorted me through the whole police process and the investigation, and he even spoke to the police and gave, you know, his statement, because the police like to, you know, ask you, have you ever told anybody that this has happened to you before? And I says, well, yeah, I've told my friend, and he was the one that encouraged me, as well as myself, to go to the police. So it's just so fucking, it just gives you issues where you're just like, you know, as I said, I've went on to have relationships with people, and, you know, we've had these conversations, and I've never once told them the name of the person that abused me, just because of the fear, even though I know they would never in a million years do that, because they're just, you know, that takes a certain type of person to do that, like a really fucking distorted soul to do that. But it's just something I like to keep to myself, because one, there's no legal proceedings against them, there's nothing outstanding, and, you know, does it really matter, you know, the name of this guy, you know, who really gives a fuck about him? It's, you know, but it is an important part of my story, because that is how I got introduced to what I then went on to start doing, you know. And I started doing that I would say I was blackmailing those guys on those chat lines from
Talk
14,
about that.
yeah,
Talk
I
about,
started.
like, what the chat lines were. You touched on it a little bit last time, and who you were targeting and why.
Right. So basically, I was going on these chat lines, and they're like, as I said, phone in chat lines. You dial a number, you record an outgoing like message, and it runs like a carousel service. So everyone who's on the line can hear that somebody else is on the line. And no way do you have to, necessarily initiate a conversation of having sex or abuse or interest in children, because that service is like a paedophile playground, that it's already there and it's happening. You could just drop in and eavesdrop and listen into what's going on in these chat lines. That is, in my eyes, what they're predominantly used for. So yeah, I was going on these chat lines, and I was pretending to be like a service monitor to the service, like the person who was screening the messages and worked for the company and whatever. So I can understand, even though it's unjustifiable, why the company never wanted themselves to be named in any of the articles that were publicised regarding myself, because that would have made them look really bad for business. And this is another place that's making millions through, people phoning up. And yeah, a lot of it is to do with that, but a lot of them are just people wanting to meet other people for sex, and I don't know, maybe a tiny percent of them want to meet for dates or whatever, fuck knows, but it is predominantly just a sexual infused line that's just all about, fucking the worst kinds of people imaginable. So I'm pretending to be this monitor person, and I had, this is like, we'll get into it further about how I've always spent my life kind of pretending to be somebody else other than myself. And for the first time ever, I'm just being me. And it's so good and it's liberating and I feel free. It's like breaking fucking chains, like even the voice, just speaking in my natural, normal voice. None of this fucking bullshit pretending to be fucking other people, like, because my whole life's just been spent pretending to be somebody that I'm not. So I'm pretending to be the chat line monitor, and I'm basically saying like, look, listen, we've got these recordings of you, which I had recorded at the time on my phone, of you saying that you've sexually abused this person, or even some of them never said they sexually abused kids. They had just fantasized about it, or that was their interest, that they like to sit and, come on a chat line and basically get off and talk about, abusing young boys and girls and talk about all their fantasies and their details and that. And there's not really much point in getting into all the nitty gritty of that, because it really is just disgusting. But as you can imagine, it is kind of like, it's a lot to do with like what I went through as well. Like some of them would say that they had been in scenarios where they were babysitting. This is a weird thing. Even though this guy wasn't babysitting, I was running away and staying in his house. But you would hear guys on these chat lines saying that, oh, I was babysitting my friend's so-and-so daughter or son, and they were like maybe say 10 or 11 years old. And I was, telling them that, he should do this and he should do that, and I'll give him sweets and whatever, and I can abuse him in that. So there was all forms, every level of kind of paedophilia and sexual paedophilia interest was operating on that service on an industrial scale, let's be fair, because the chatline company ran multiple services. It was all over the phone. None of it was over the internet, certainly at that time, but it was all over the phone. And I think they had like a texting service, but they had like so many different numbers. Like they would advertise it as like, say the south of England, north of England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. So it was on an industrial scale, because it was people phoning in from all around the country. I don't know if they're internationally connected or whatever, but they were making a hell of a lot of money, put it that way. Because I can remember once I sat and done the calculations on like the time, like the price of the calls per minute and how many people are on the line, and roughly, and you're talking like a good fucking 5, 6, 7, 8 million they're turning over a year, and that's just on one phone-in service alone.
There's
so
no
see
investigations even going into this. It's just
no,
happening.
No, it's just happening.
Wow.
It's a big business in these chatline companies. I think they're still quite big to this day. Like the service that I was going on, everybody that you spoke to, it was like members of the public. It was just people connecting. Obviously, there was all that paedophilia stuff, but there's a lot of chatline companies where guys will phone up, and the people that they're speaking to are paid operators. And obviously they conduct themselves completely different, because it's a job to them. They're getting paid to receive those calls. And the longer they keep the guys on the line, the more money they get. So those kind of chatline companies, I think, tend to find, like, I don't think they tend to be embroiled in this kind of level of stuff. But when it's just like a you know, I don't know how they actually advertise it, but they do make a mention in their advertisement of the fact that, you know, you're going to get real people when you connect with us. It's not going to be paid pretend operators talking at you, you know. But I think that's mainly predominantly on chat lines for when guys are phoning up to speak to women. And you don't hear a lot of women phoning up chat lines to talk to other women or to talk to guys even. Most of the women on them are getting paid to talk to guys. Whereas when you go on, you know, some of the other services, which are, they're not obviously free, but it's, do you understand what I mean? It's all people that are, you know, phoning in. Nobody's contracted by that company or whatever. It's just members of the public. So it's open up to everybody. There's no screening, there's like no screening service in place. There's no kind of way to identify who's calling if they're phoning in from like an unregistered number or whatever. So these paedophiles operated in the sense of like they were given what they felt like anonymity, in the sense of like, nobody's ever going to be able to find out what I'm doing, and I'm phoning in and off an unregistered number. So I'm untraceable, basically. And this is important to mention as well. We'll get into this because it was obviously mentioned in my case and stuff about, you know, well, if I was blackmailing them, how was I blackmailing them just with recordings? Because I did at that time in my life have the ability and means, and the police investigated me for this and they looked into it and whatever. And, you know, I shared certain information with them with regards to it. But at that time, I was able to obtain like name and address details from people's phone numbers if I could get their phone numbers, and call records. So then that led to me being able to identify these paedophiles in places of work, family members, their closer inner circle. Because once you've got that evidence on somebody, you know, you can by all means phone them back and say, look, I've got these recordings of you talking about your sexual interest in children. But half of them would just be like, oh, fucking whatever, hang up, fuck off, and think that you're going to go away. But if you corner these guys in a position where you've got their name, address, date of birth, fucking even what school they went to, national insurance number, the whole lot, then that's when the fear factor comes in. And that's when it kind of put me in the position where it was a complete opposite from where that guy had put me, you know, where I was put in a position of fear where I had no choice other than at the time to just comply with him, because I didn't want to go back to that school because I was so fucking terrified of it, you know. And we spoke about all that as to why I was so scared of that school, because of everything I had been through in the child care system. So I had every reason to at that moment in time just think that that was the lesser of the two evils, even though it was abuse that was taking place. So I gained all this intelligence on these guys through their mobile phone networks or landline providers or whatever. And I would build up, I was running it like a business, to be honest with you, right? I was running it like a business in the sense that like I would have so many different cases that I was dealing with. But I wasn't just taking the guy's money and then going, right, you go back to your life and be okay with the fact that I've let you off the hook. That was never the case. That never happened at all. I would get money from these guys, right, by saying that I was going to destroy recordings and evidence and stuff, right? But I would report these guys anonymously to Crime Stoppers, because obviously I couldn't phone up the police and say, oh, look, I've just blackmailed somebody, can you come and take them down? Because then I'm putting myself in the frame of being, you know, what effectively eventually did happen to me. It got to a point in my life, Emma, where I was doing it that much that I knew it was wrong, that I didn't do much to cover my tracks. I could have avoided getting, you know, apprehended in that for it. I got to a point where I think I pushed myself that far that I was just like, I knew I was going to get caught. I was making so many fucking slip ups. And, you know, the fact that I'd even told that guy about it and he was using it against me, the former friend, and, you know, he had given statements to the police and stuff because he was friends with my abuser at that point. And my abuser obviously wanted him to give a statement saying that he was with me and that I'd made it all up. He was obviously telling him about the chat lines and his involvement and everything. But yeah, I did expose a lot of these guys for like.
Here's the problem that I have, right? So this is happening. The public can go participate in illegal crime on chat lines that are accessible to anybody. You're actually going on there, finding people who are criminals, you're reporting them, and you're doing what the police should be doing, which is, I don't want to say blackmailing, but saying, I know what you're doing and it's not okay.
Yeah.
And you don't have the ability to prosecute people. Like, ultimately, I feel like that's what you were doing, is you were picking out a specific demographic of people, pedophiles, the people that we should be prosecuting as a society, that police should be investigating, and you're investigating them and digging up their skeletons and collecting their information. You're basically doing the job of a private investigator, or, you know, here in the United States, the FBI. Like, you're doing important work doing this. Like, I know that it's a crime to blackmail people. It does not sit well with me, though, that somebody was not investigating, that it took you, somebody who was so young and who was forced into all these different aspects of side effects, in a sense, of your abuse. And you're the one doing the police's job. They investigate you, and there's no investigations into these phone lines. There's no investigations into these pedophiles.
Yeah. No, I totally hear what you're saying, and I can accept that, and I can also accept that what discredited me in the sense of everything that I was doing is the fact that I was taking money. And I've said to you as well, like, you know, I feel I've paid my price now. You know, I went to prison, I pled guilty, I never went through the whole process of trying to get away with it. You know, I can even remember shouting out in courts and stuff like, why am I the only person here? Like, fair enough, charge me for the blackmail and the extortion. But let's look into the guys, because nobody pays. Like, I had one guy, there was a lot that wasn't reported on in my indictment, because obviously I pled guilty, so I made a deal for a lot of information, like a lot of the charges to be reduced. But there was one guy that was reported to have given me like 32 grand or 34 grand. You don't give somebody 34 grand unless you are complicit in something illegal yourself. You know, so like, are these people, have they been, like, I'm going through my indictment now because I requested a copy of it from the courts, because it has been so long now. It's been 10 years later since those convictions, and well, 11, I think, actually, but whatever. And it is interesting to kind of see some of the names on them, and I've Googled some of them, and I'm trying to sort of try and, you know, see if they tie in with who they, you know, if they went on to offend or do something. And you know, I was convinced, and I don't know if I can ever actually prove it, that there was potentially a couple of semi-high profile names on the indictment, people that did go on to offend in other aspects of their life that is basically the same sex cases, sexual abuse and whatever. But I should never have been taking money for it, you know. And if I had just been going on there and exposing them and phoning up their friends and family and saying, look, listen to these recordings, you know, like, I did break families apart, you know, I did destroy lives, I did create a lot of, I think people might go, no, you know, you definitely didn't create bad karma for yourself, but you're putting all that out into the universe, right? All this destruction that I'm doing, I'm phoning it, and I was like on the rampage every fucking day, constantly, like, as I said, running it like a business, phoning up, getting their information. I had one case after the other, like actually handling them like cases. I just went into like a robotic frame of mind where it was just like, I'll deal with him, I'll get so much money from this one, I'll get so much money from that one. Sometimes I would obviously get the money, and then because of what they had told me was so alarming, you know, if I phoned Crime Stoppers, I could report it anonymously, but there was nothing stopping me from phoning the police, which was done as well, and reporting it anonymously, just so that it was acted on and taken in, you know, it was acted on more quicker, because Crime Stoppers can sit on information sometimes, depending on, you know, if it's an immediate threat or whatever. A lot of these guys were talking about, you know, as I said, a lot of them, they obviously said it was just fantasies, and that was what they used to kind of get off on, and kind of that was their sexual, you know, motivation and the drive that kind of brought them on the lines in the first place. So who knows, maybe, you know, some of them did abuse kids, maybe some of them just thought about it and liked to talk about it and also look at child porn or whatever, but it's all connected. That's what I used to always argue with them, because they would always 100% of the time, I'm not just saying 99, 100% of the time, right, when it went from me gathering this intelligence on these guys and then putting it to them in like a journalistic form, like doorstepping them, right, and I'm like fucking, you know, 16, 17, 18, 19 at this point. So I'm young. I'm still young at the time. You know what? This is what people need to understand. I'm not a fully fledged adult. I'm just at the care system, and I'm fucked up because of that. That doesn't justify it, but it explains how all this came about. And then obviously I met the guy and whatever, and we know how it goes on from there. But 100% of the time, they would always sit back and say, I've never done anything, it's just a fantasy. And I would always say in response to that, well, if it's just a fantasy, then you're just as complicit as the guys out there who are doing it. you know, because some of them would say that they had watched like child porn and they had watched, you know, videos of kids being raped and whatever. But as soon as I had put it to them from the angle of me pretending to be the chat line moderator, they would deny that they had ever watched it. They would deny that they had, everything just came back to the bare minimum levels of acceptance for them. Oh yeah, I spoke about it, it was a fantasy, but it was not true. And I always used to break it down for them and say, well, if it's just a fantasy, right, you've already escalated in your level of behavior because one, these are thoughts you're having in your head, right? So they're thoughts that have went from you just having them in your head to two, picking up the phone and going on a line that you know you've got the safe space for you to discuss those things, and three, connect with other people who are going to be that way inclined themselves, and who knows what could have branched out from that. These guys probably are meeting up with other guys that are that way inclined, and then that's how these rings and stuff are created, you know, and that's how they start to operate, because you can't just go up to somebody in the street and be like, oh, you know, I don't know the full workings of these guys, but I feel like I've developed enough knowledge in what I did to kind of know what makes them tick and how they operate. And that is the safe places for them to kind of work, you know, in the shadows and in the background. You know, it's all hush hush. It's, you know, it's no transparent like me and you having a face-to-face chat, even though it's online. You know, it's over the phone, it's quiet, it's a voice, it could be anybody, you know. And eventually over time, these guys will open up to each other and tell them who they are. They certainly never did that with me, because I never took it that far. I gained the intelligence, like the names and addresses, through their mobile phone and network providers and whatever, which I know is like a total breach of data protection. But the fact and the way that I was able to do that is something that was through the police. A number that I had got when I was fucking really young. I can't even remember how I came across it, but it was like a subscriber check number. So you could phone in and obtain the details on anybody's account. So it was something that that's how I got their details. You know, these guys wouldn't just turn around and go, here's my name, here's my address, here's my wife's number, here's my sister's number, whatever. So when you've got that, when I had obviously compiled all that together, that's when sometimes I didn't even have to necessarily say to them, you know, look, oh, if you make a payment, then I'll make all this go away, even though I wasn't making it all just go away. They would say to me, you know, oh, I'll give you such and such and whatever. I can remember once speaking to a guy who worked for a woman who was a really famous interior designer in London. I don't know whether to mention her name or not, because I did actually end up speaking to her, because obviously he was one of her employees. But a lot of these guys were connected to aristocratic kind of establishments in London and stuff. A lot of them were in the legal profession. A lot of them were just really wealthy land and business owners that had the free time to just sit about all day and be phoning up fucking, you know, these sex lines and doing what they were doing. But I always remember speaking to this famous interior designer woman, and he was like our main personal assistant and had been for like years. And I played the recordings back to her. I said, look, don't just trust my word for it. Don't just believe me, because I was just a voice on the phone to her. I was actually saying to her, like, listen to what he was saying. And she recognized his voice straight away and all that. And she listened to the full like message that he had put out, where he was saying that he was into young girls and whatever. And I said to her, because I didn't know much about it at the time, I was like, have you got kids? You know, like, is this something that you want to have around working for you? And then she went on the whole rampage of trying to defend them, and, you know, how what I was doing was wrong. And I get, like, this is before there was even any mention of money or anything like that. This was one of these cases where I just kind of flew off the handle. I talk about them like cases, like as if I'm a fucking, you know, a lawyer or whatever, but that's the best way to describe it, right? It was one of these cases where I just kind of went, no, I've heard far too much from him. I just need to like expose him the best way that I can. And I spoke with her, and she heard the depravity and the details of the things that he was saying. And I was like, so what do you think of that? You know, like, is that something you want to have working for your company? And she was just like, well, you know, this is his personal life, and what's going on in his personal life has absolutely nothing to do with me. And I was just like, fucking hell. Because some people are just like that. They're just so disconnected. They're like, well, as long as it's not in my backyard and it doesn't affect me directly, and he's not abusing my kids effectively, who gives a fuck whether he's phoning up a chat line on a Friday night and talking about wanting to sexually abuse young girls? So you would get a lot.
A powerful person, because one thing I want people to think about is you literally said one person provided you with $32,000, that's not something just an everyday person could do. That's somebody that is very affluent in society, that probably has a very high paying, prestigious job that the public looks at and admires and thinks that they deserve to be put on a pedestal. Pedophiles and child abusers don't have a demographic that they identify with. This is something that proliferates every aspect of society, whether it is gender, job, or race, whatever. But I mean, that is really significant, because I think there's an understanding sometimes that the public is presented with, that a pedophile has to look like he's homeless and he's like this crazy whacked out that's on drugs. And some of them are, don't get me wrong, but that's more often than not, it is normal people.
Certainly not any of the guys I was dealing with. They all had money. You know, they all had a lot of money. That's the reason why I was going for the money, because the thing is, right, let's look at the legality of it.
Some of the careers that these people had.
They were all lawyers. Like, when you look at the articles that were written about them, they were portrayed as victims, and they were given anonymity, like rape victims. They were basically protected like victims of abuse, right? And I asked the police about that. I can always remember asking them about that, or I asked my lawyer or whatever, and he was like, that's so they can secure a conviction on you, because obviously if their identities are revealed, then, you know, certain things could obviously come out about who they were or whatever. And remember, I told you when I first got remanded, you've got to remember, this is like a white collar crime, like in the sense that nobody was physically hurt. I wasn't going out with a knife and threatening people or robbing them in that kind of way. I was remanded straight away into custody, which was so unusual, and none of my lawyers could get their head around that, because they thought that it was just really weird that for a young offender to be remanded so intensely, and for the prosecution to be like, no, you cannot let him out, whilst he cannot be on bail for his defense, he cannot be in it, like, for them applying so much pressure, and then my lawyer coming down and telling me, after looking at the indictment, one of these guys' names sounds like a name of a high-profile procurator fiscal in London, a very high-up guy. I don't know if he worked in the royal courts or whatever, but he was high enough for the guy who was representing me in Edinburgh at the time, obviously. He was high enough for him to know who he was. So that's why I requested a copy, and I'm going through it still, and I'll actually even send you it so you can have a look at it, because I'm going to be sharing it with a few people that we've obviously spoken about, whatever, but I'll send you it and you can see the names of them. And I've obviously Googled a lot of them, and it's hard to work out with one of them does come back as somebody who's in the legal profession, but it's because the indictment's not got the dates of births on them. But the thing is, they wanted me off the street because they wanted to get access to obviously my laptops, like everything that they felt that would be obviously incriminating to me, but also incriminating to them as well. You see, it worked both ways. Obviously, the evidence that they would have used against me was the money. The evidence that they had against me was the wire transfers. It was the money that was getting transferred from their account into my account. None of these guys actually, apart from one, reported me to the police. Well, why would they? You know, why would they report me to the police? The police actually went, they actually set up an operation called Operation Machine, a nationwide operation. And they flew up and down all over the country and pressured these guys into giving statements by saying that, I don't know what they said, but they were forced to give statements, put it that way. The police went in and obviously said, look, you've been a victim of blackmail and extortion. It's so fucked up. One police guy did say to me, or it was a policewoman, I think, she did say to me, she was like to me, you know, at the time, she says, look, listen, I totally, you know, do not agree with what you did. I think maybe she could understand that there were reasonings in like my past and how I got to where I got to. She did say to me, but don't think for 1 second we're not going to investigate who these guys are and what they've been up to, you know, because that is the kind of the core of the story here. Like, well, what did they have so damaging to hide that they felt complied to hand over so much money? Right. Whether that was done or not. I also remember my lawyer saying to me at one point, the reason that they were given anonymity is because I think this is like a mandatory thing in a case of blackmail or extortion. It's maybe the same over in the States. You're given anonymity for certain kinds of crime if you're a victim, just because of the shame and whatever. But one of my lawyers said to me that the reason they were given anonymity is so that if these guys did go on and get prosecuted for the things that they were saying and claiming to have done, and if the police were investigating those things because they had uncovered their details through me, then they didn't want the two cases to be connected legally or through the media or whatever. So that's why their names were kept well back. I want to just blast those guys' names out there. I'm sitting there with like an indictment like that with all these guys' names. And that's the one thing that's always fucking annoyed me, is the fact that like they were like kept in the dark and in the shadows, and I was put out there. And, you know, like we were talking about before, like how they are, one of the reports that I read, I can't even remember, I could get it up, and it was one of the detectives who was dealing with the oversight of the case. He never actually met me, and he was like, we do not condone any criminal behaviour against anyone's sexuality, race or gender. This wasn't a crime against somebody's sexuality, race or gender, but the fact that they were trying to align it with that to make it like, even there was somebody that I spoke to not that long ago about my case, it was a few months ago, and they were sitting with their partner, and they says, oh, do you remember what he was in jail for? And they says, oh, he was in jail for blackmailing gay guys, wasn't he? And that's another thing, because that's what they kind of tried to portray it as. Even though people know that these guys were fucking pedophiles, a lot of people think that I was just targeting gay guys and threatening to expose their sexuality. That was complete. That is just total fucking bullshit. That couldn't be further from the truth. If that, like, that is just so far gone. But the fact that a police officer came out and said, we are not going to tolerate somebody targeting people, because trying to make it look like it was a hate crime, as if like I was targeting these guys because they were gay. I'm sick of people constantly aligning sexual orientation with paedophilia. It is just a total wrong. It's wrong. There's no, those two things don't go together. They're completely separate. But yeah, that was something that really fucking annoyed me as well. It was, they were just like, oh, you know, he was a highly manipulative person who put a lot of pressure on these vulnerable individuals and members of society, and that, you know, some of them had to remortgage their house and stuff like that. I'm going to just be honest with you. So fucking what? So fucking what if they had to remortgage their house? I do not regret what I did, right? I did what I did because at the end of the day, right, I reported as much of these guys as I could as possible. I exposed them to their families and friends, right? I let people know them for who they really were, and not just dealing with it behind closed courtrooms. Like, I was letting them hear recordings of them talking about them apparently abusing their own kids or somebody else's or whatever. There's so many phone calls I could talk to you about, because I was doing this for a long period of time. There was a lot of money that was obviously made in that time. So there was obviously a lot of guys that were getting blackmailed, but I was doing, you know, I'm not trying to justify it, but I'm explaining it in the sense of, you know, that is what was going on. I wasn't just sitting there going, oh, I'll take this, I'll take that. There you go, on your way, on your bike, have a good time. I wasn't turning a blind eye to this. I was highly motivated to, you know, have them in the position of fear, you know, flip the switch of power so that I was the one that was, you know, in a position where they were begging me for their fucking life. And I always feel that if you go for somebody's money, when you go for the juggler, which is somebody's finances, that's when you really fuck them up. That's when you really instill fear in someone's life, because everything else round about them, especially these kinds of people, because they operate in positions of authority, it's obviously in line with money, that creates an impact. You know, a lot of these guys, if they were further investigated by the police, you know, a lot of them maybe would have just been given cautions, or, you know, they would have been given a suspended sentence or a fine. None of them would have been given what I was given, a 45-month prison sentence for blackmail. That would never have happened to them. So we haven't got a justice system that applies morally the right kind of sentences to the right kind of crimes effectively. Anything involving fraud, money laundering, extortion, blackmail, anything at all that is finance related, they will chuck the book at you. The same with drugs as well, that's exactly the same. But when it comes to rape, historical cases of child abuse, you know, all the stuff to do with paedophilia and just sex crimes in general, they're very, very lenient. I know in some states in America, they can be quite hard on them. I know like I've heard of some cases, I don't know if it's just isolated incidents, but they do seem to be a bit harsher over there. But here they are so, like bare minimum when it comes to, sex offenders and what prison sentences are handed out to them. So obviously I've got that in my mind at the time of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just, as I said, I'm explaining it, my mindset and how I was at the time and what was going through my head. I had already went to the police, tried to report my offender. Nothing was done about it. All the abuse that happened to me in care, I've been let down by so many different services that this public inquiry, this child abuse inquiry, is the first time that I'm ever actually going to be able to stand up and be heard. And I want to take them down. I want to go after all of them. Because if I wasn't in those unsafe environments, I would never have ended up as a child in the hands of a paedophile who exposed me to everything that then went on to what happened in my offending behaviour. And I've been nothing but demonised, criminalised, painted as this monster, but painted as this dangerous, twisted individual, when I was somebody who has just been abandoned, shut down, closed up, don't listen to them. This is who they are. I've had to defend myself on so many occasions, like, when I've been in relationships with guys or, whatever, and I've met the parent, so to speak, I've had to sit down and have this conversation. I'm sick of having this conversation because it is only one aspect of my life. It's an important aspect. It needs to be addressed, and that's why I'm coming out and taking full ownership of it now. And I want it everywhere. I want people to understand what really did go on. It wasn't just as clean cut as how people perceive it in a 2-second article that they read online. There is so much more that's going on behind the scenes with regards to my case. And as I said, if there were so many opportunities for so many other services to step in that were there, that were aware, care workers, social workers, police, whatever, there were so many places that were aware of things that had happened to me or that were going on in my life or whatever, and nobody done anything to help. So is it really that shocking to then realize that I went on to do what I did?
Exactly. And that's the part too that I want people to think about, is your reaction to your abuse is what led you to do what you did. That's not something that people wake up and say, I'm going to go do this today. There's a process that leads somebody to do that. And honestly, I know that extorting money is a crime. Otherwise, to me, you're heroic for doing that. You were doing a job that adults in your life should have been doing for you. You should have never had to have investigated people that are hurting you and that are hurting other children. That should be the job of responsible adults in authoritarian positions, not a 16, 17-year-old kid, basically, it's a teenager. To me, what you did is heroic. And again, I know that there were things that go against the law in that, and okay. Otherwise, the work that you were doing is work that you shouldn't have had to be doing. That's work that as a society, we should be doing. And it is such a shame that they investigated you so hard and gave you such a hard sentence, which I want you to talk about too. And they didn't even look into these other cases, and that people just get a free pass who are committing the crimes. It's the people exposing them that get criminalized. And you're an extreme case where in the physical reality, you can see that, but that even happens on the internet. It's so hard to get a page taken down off Instagram that's exploiting kids. You can report them over and over again, and it doesn't go against community guidelines. But somebody like me can make a post against them, and I'm the one who can get my whole account deleted or my post completely taken off or shadow banned because I'm trying to expose them and I'm trying to do something about it, and the system failed you. They tried so hard to break your spirit, and every time you took any option you could to try to get justice in your life. And that's what I see in your case, is a teenager who was abandoned and betrayed by everybody in his life, taking any step that he could to get justice for yourself and for other people that you were able to find out were going through something similar to some capacity that you were, and to expose the people committing those crimes.
I know. I think I've always had to just be the person to look out for me because there's been nobody else there. And it's like what we said in the last podcast. It's like, I should never have been in fucking care to begin with, Emma. I came from a large family of people on both sides. And as I said, I've had it out with them in the sense of like asking why. At 5 years old, why was I in care? At 10 years old, why was I in care? Like, why was I in care? There was so many people that could have stepped in and prevented so much from happening. Let's not just put the responsibility here for, you know, obviously the care service massively contributed to how all this came about. But a lot of that could have been prevented beforehand if people actually just looked at, you know, a 5-year-old who was in a position where, you know, their parents couldn't look after them for whatever reason, right? And there was other people around on my mum and my dad's side, right, who could have stepped in and could have prevented this whole chain of events from just going on and on and on. It just went on because people were too interested in living their life and getting on with their lives. It was ignored and ignored and ignored. Like, there's relatives of mine that know more about this media aspect to me and the case about me than anything to do with the abuse that happened to me in care. Some of them, like, they just don't know. People, they don't know because they were never informed, and a lot of them, it's just how it is. You know, it's how it's always been. And it's, as I said, it's one of it's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why I feel so compelled to speak out, because, you know, people are, you know, always going to be able to look up those articles of me online, and I've got to just accept the fact that, you know, once it's out there, it's out there. But I just don't accept the narrative that's constantly getting spun around me, and I just think that it's very narrow-minded and very just put on this one particular direction of you blackmail pedophiles and that is it, or you blackmailed gay guys and that is it, and you are the sick and twisted person. Like, let's speak about the fact that the guy who was reporting on my case was somebody who was actually a former friend of mine. So that's why I had so much bad publicity. That's why I had to get a lot of articles taken down that friends had sold stories to the news, to the newspapers, saying a whole load of fucking shit. They tried to link me and line me with this guy who was quite well known in Scotland at the time. He's now dead, a guy called Tam Payton. He was like the manager of a group called the Bay City Rollers or whatever back in the 70s. But he was quite a high profile, well-known drug dealer, and he had been in jail for sex offences in the 70s or whatever. Now, I've never met him, never had any contact with him. I spoke to him on the phone once because people were putting a lot of rumours around before I ended up in prison. Oh, this is where he's getting his money from. He must be one of Tam's boys or whatever. So it was inevitable that that was going to end up in the papers, even though the person who put it in the news regarding me was the same guy who gave all the, who came and helped me with regards to, you know, the supporting me, giving my evidence against my abuser. So he knew that, once again, that was untrue. He knew that there was no affiliations with that Tam Payton whatsoever, but it was reported, and I'll send you the article so you can read them later, that I was apparently going to big drug-fueled parties, and I was coming back and bragging to him how I was going to blackmail him for all his millions and that. None of it was true. But the point I'm making is that this publicity around my case and all the things that were said about my character is one of the driving forces as to why people took such a dislike towards me. It wasn't so much about what I'd done. Like, for example, when I was in prison, right, I went into protection in prison, not because I had to go into protection because of the crime that I committed, but because obviously I was in a young offenders at the time, and it came out that I had obviously went through that period of thinking I wanted to be a woman and whatever. Now, can you imagine that coming out in our young offenders, where they're all like young fucking boys from 16 to 19, 20 years old, and they've all got that street fucking mentality, and there's pictures of me fucking in the news dressed as a woman. So when it went up to court again, and I went up for another hearing, they reported, oh, he had to go into protection because other offenders found out the crimes that he committed. That is completely untrue. That is, can you see what I mean by the narrative, making it sound worse than what it is? Like, almost like trying to align me with them as if like I was some sort of a beast or sex offender. I went into protection for other reasons. I went into protection because, one, it was a young offender, they were just jumping about, causing trouble all the time, there was constant fights, and it was quieter up in the protection hall. And we'll talk about the changes I made in that prison whilst I was there, because I'm sure if you read that thing I sent you, there was a big change that I made because I was giving a lot of stories to the press when I was in jail. regarding how favourable the sex offenders were being treated. Because can you imagine going into jail for committing offences against these guys and then fucking being put amongst those types of guys? It just infuriated me. It was just so back to front and upside down and inside out. It was just, none of it made sense. But yeah, that was another factor that was reported, that, oh, you know, it had to go into protection because other young offenders found out what he'd done. Other young offenders knew what I was in for. That nobody had an issue with that. But they were like, oh, fucking, are you a guy? Are you a woman? When all of that came out, I just thought it's best to take myself away from them. I never felt under any physical threat or violence. There was never any of that. To be fair, like I said to you before, jail was a walk in the park for me. As bad as that sounds, what I had been through in the care system was a much more worse traumatic experience than the prison system. Now, for me to say that in itself just says it all. You know, the fact that I was in jail and I was just lying about all day watching TV, reading magazines, and it was pretty just fucking quiet and whatever. When I compared the two together, you know, prison was like nothing in comparison to the institutions that I went through when I was in care. You know, it's fucking twisted. How many minutes? How long are we into this, by the way, now?
About an hour.
About an hour. Right,
Yeah,
cool.
we're doing good. Yeah, but I hope that resonates with people just hearing that, because when you haven't gone through something like that, you can't put yourself in somebody's shoes as easily. And that's not the fault of the person that hasn't gone through it. But that's a really great perspective to compare, because people who aren't trauma survivors, who could imagine themselves in prison, that could be something that to them rattles them, you know, and they get those same type of jitters that you get thinking about what you went through the care system, in a sense. And the fact that you were criminalized for something that, again, is and deserved to be investigated more than what it was. You ended up serving prison time for that, and you preferred that over what you went through. I mean, we are failing. Yeah. We are failing children. We are failing teenagers. The fact that you can say that is so sad, because to most people, even just thinking about going to prison, or people who have gone to prison, leave and say, oh my gosh, that was the worst experience of my life. I can't ever imagine going there again. I don't ever want to go there again. And here you are, this innocent child who had all of his innocence taken away, and prison actually provided kind of an escape from that for you, where you had,
in a sense, yeah, I know what you mean. In a sense, it was definitely much more. I think because I had already been in controlled, contained environments to some respect. Obviously, I was able to run away from these care homes, so I wasn't able to run away from jail. But just the whole somebody walking about with a set of keys and there being a routine and some sort of order or whatever. But yeah, like yeah, you're right. The fact that, like, when as an adult, when I've looked back and I've compared the two, and I'm like, no, wait a minute, care was just like so much worse than jail. That just shows you how fucked up this whole system is in place. That an environment that's set up to protect children from apparently dangerous bad lifestyles that they were born into, or whatever reasons they ended up in care, that's actually worse than the system that's put in place for to actually punish people who commit crimes. It is just fucking mind-blowing that is the reality of our world. It is fucking mind-blowing, and why there isn't like an actual outcry, like people in uproar over that, is shocking. It's absolutely fucking shocking. You know, it really is. It's just it's so it's hard to get your head around. It really is. It's hard for me to still sometimes, like, I sit and actually think, you know, wait a minute, that was me. That's real. That is like a true reflection of your life. That, you know, jail was actually fucking nothing in comparison to what you went through with, you know, the people in care. It's just wrong, man. It's fucking wrong.
It's so wrong.
And
so you ended up, you were sentenced to 2 years.
Yeah, I done just under 2 years. It's like 22 months or whatever. So
yeah,
45 months. So basically, it's like a 4-year sentence. You get you serve half your time or whatever. That's another fucked up thing. I think that's changed, actually. The law's changed over here. I think when you get sentenced, like, that's your sentence, because obviously you hear a lot of cases where people are abused, you know, people commit rapes and whatever, and they'll get like 6 years, and they'll think, right, that's bad enough. But it's even worse because you hear they only do 3 years and get out. But I think I'm sure they've changed it, or I heard someone say somewhere, I can't remember, that, you know, when you get handed a sentence, that's the sentence, and you'll do that time. So yeah, basically when I was doing all the blackmailing and stuff, right, obviously the kind of lifestyle that I was living, it was obviously drawing a lot of attention to me. People were obviously naturally asking questions, you know, like, how do you make your money? Like, how are you? Because I had like fucking chauffeur-driven cars, I had like a personal assistant. I was living a good life. I came accustomed to a good life very early on because I just resented so much about how much the care system had instilled in me, and how this is, you know, another small factor that plays into it. You know, you'll never amount to anything, you'll never be nothing, you'll basically fucking fall by the wayside in the gutter. And I was just so determined not to do that. And basically that kind of correlates in the sense that, like, you know, the blackmailing was giving me this lifestyle, so I was able to like live a, you know, a high means or whatever. And I just really wanted to rub that in the care systems. Like, I can always remember, I know it sounds so fucking sad, right? But I can always remember actually getting my drivers and stuff to drive me into the campus to that school when I was in these cars and stuff. Just because I felt like it wasn't to show off, but it was to prove to them, or trying to say to them, like, look, fucking fuck you. You said I was going to end up in a gutter, basically, with a needle in my arm or whatever. You know, like, I'm coming in here, I've got my own driver, whatever. So that was a driving force and need for me just to so quickly just prove them wrong. But I do remember getting, you know, the drivers and that to drive in, and they're thinking, like, wait a minute here, like, you know, you normally get us to take you on nights out or going like normal shit, and you're asking me to, you know, because every time I was in that area or near to the school, I'd always want to just go for a drive in and see if I could recognize any of the staff or whatever. And that's like what I said to you before. I think about being in care every single day. So that's why I've got to a point now where I think it is just comfortable for me to talk about, because it's a big part of who I am. And it's contributed to so many ways in how I've lived my life, and the behaviours and the things that I've went on to do. They played a huge part in breaking me down so much emotionally and mentally that, you know, even just stupid, silly things like that, I felt like I needed to, you know, go out of my way for it to be like, look, you know, my life's really fucking good now, and, you know, yous are totally wrong, and that it never turned out how, you know, and the fact that they're telling you that, you know, you're going to amount to nothing, and that's the care system for you. That's just how it is for a lot of people, you know. But yeah, so we've spoke about that. We spoke about, you know, the sort of beginning, the care, the prison environment and stuff. See, the one thing I will say, I don't know what relevance it's got, but when I was in jail, I actually fell in love with this guy. It's fucked up, right? He was in for, like, I don't know what it was, but it was quite violent offences. So when I was in there, I felt quite safe as well, because I had this guy who was like kind of like the top guy of the place, and we had like a bit of a thing going on. So once again, I was kind of like completely just shut off for the outside world, never kind of knew what I was. It was like a jail love, basically, right? It sounds so fucking sad, but it obviously helped me cope whilst I was in that environment. But yeah, this was what we're going to say as well. When I was in there, because I went into the protection hall, and that's where I was having to mix with some of the sex offenders. It was mixed. Obviously, some were sex offenders, some of them were in there because they needed protected from other prisoners that they were like in gangs with or whatever. And some of them were just me. I'm no jail orientated, you know what I mean? Like, look at me. I'm not somebody that, when I tell people that I've been to jail, they're like, what the fuck, you were in jail? Because I just don't seem like it's just no my environment. That's one of the reasons why I've never ended up back there. But when I was in that particular unit, the care system, and I was having to hang around with sex offenders, not hang around with them, but they were in the same hall as us, I just felt so angry that this was the setup and situation, that they should have like a protection unit for vulnerable prisoners, and then there should be like the sex offenders hall. And I think a lot of establishments have got that. But for some reason at that moment in time, that young offenders that I was in at the time, Pullman, that was the situation and the setup. And I just really fucking resented that. As you can imagine, I'm in there for committing a crime against the very people that I'm fucking having to see every day. So I started phoning up and giving a lot of information out to the press, and telling them like the liberation dates of when these guys are getting out, like, you know, the release dates and whatever. I got into a lot of trouble with the management and everything, because it was, once again, I just seen a level of injustice, you know, like, one, we're having to mix with these people, and two, this guy's raped a kid and he's getting out and I'm in here doing a longer sentence than him. You know, it just really fucking annoyed me. So that was my motivation. Obviously, I never got paid for any of those stories or anything, but I developed a relationship with a journalist at one of the newspapers, and I gave her a lot of information regarding, you know, a lot of these sex offenders. I think I sent you the link, or the links were on that email I'm sure I sent you, you know, that breakdown thing of my story. And that was true. That was like how one of the guys was living, you know, like when he was in that part of the jail. He was like, had the best job, he was out his cell the most, he was getting it really, really cushy in comparison to other offenders. And that's just what really, really boiled my blood. So I was never off the phone. I used to phone up a relative of mine and get them to transfer me through to newspapers and give the information out that way, because I just felt that it was a huge flaw in the system. And because it caused so much disruption to the management and the good order of the jail and everything, I'll actually send you. It's quite an interesting little read, because I got put on a rule, and basically that means that you know, you're a threat, and you're a threat to the good order of the jail. So I got put on this rule, and basically means that I got put into solitary confinement for doing this. I knew all this would happen at the time when I was doing it, but I was just like, nah, fuck it. These guys people need to know that this guy who raped an 8-year-old or a 4-year-old's getting released back out into the community. Once again, people will be like, you know, what makes me fucking judge and jury? That's me taking things into my hands. But so, you know, who else is going to do it? You know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to, they don't voice or alert the public when these people get out. They get released and they get housed in communities where there is kids. They get put right directly beside kids. So I just felt, by knowing one of these particular guy's stories and what he was in jail for, and I was just so angry at the fact that he was getting out, and he was like kind of bragging to everybody and like, oh, I'm getting out on Tuesday. And I was just thinking, you're getting out to fucking, you know, maximum press exposure, and people are going to know that you're getting out. And that's exactly what fucking happened. So I got put away into the solitary confinement by one of the governors in the prison at the time, and she was just like, you know, you need to be put on this rule. You're affecting the good order and structure of the prison and what have you. But I think even her, she could kind of get it as well, because by the time I had left jail, I kind of remember having a chat with her about that and the whole press thing and me giving stories and that. And she was just like, look, I totally get why you did it. You just went about it the wrong way. She was like, if you had managed to do it in a way that kept it off my radar, where she didn't have to be seen to be doing something about it, she was like, I was all for it. I can remember her even saying that. But my point in all that is because of all what I was doing, I don't know if this is still in place just now, but it actually got the two halls divided. So the sex offenders were eventually separated from us, and there were sex offenders on the one side, and then the other protection unit was just prisoners that were either in there because of choice or vulnerability, or there was issues in the mainstream prison or whatever, but we weren't mixing with sex offenders, and we weren't branded sex offenders because of the fact that they were in the same. So there was a separation created, and that was right after I had done all this stuff with the media. So the two things have got to be connected, and they obviously seen me as, or anybody, they thought if he's doing this, then we could get somebody else in here in a couple of years' time doing this. You know, because obviously when that guy got released from prison, the press were following the social workers to try and see where he was going so they could do an expose on where they housed them. And that costs a lot of money and time and whatever. So I caused a lot of trouble for them. But inevitably, it did work out for me in the sense that I wasn't having to sit around and mix with these people afterwards every day, and that we were separated. The two things are absolutely, without a doubt, they have to be directly connected because they happen so closely together. But that was just me once again. I just felt like, fuck this, you know, I'm not going to be sitting next to somebody like that. And also by the rest of the prison, classed or people. I was so fortunate because everybody knew what I was in jail for, in the sense that my case was known. But if it wasn't, there was always a question mark above everybody's head. Well, what are you in for? Because these sex offenders, unless their cases were public or high profile, you never knew. So that was another issue. You never knew if this person or that person was a sex offender. You just knew what they told you, or obviously if they were high profile. So that was a good thing as well, because then at least all of us who were on that side of the hall knew that we were in for what we claimed we were in for, and we weren't sex offenders. And it kind of put them where they belong and their category, and just fucking put them beside each other, because they shouldn't be mixing with people that are, some of the guys in there were victims of sexual abuse, and they're having to mix with people. Well, obviously me, I'm one of them, but there was other guys I can remember telling me, like, I'm having to sit and, stand next to a guy that's abused young girls, and I was abused myself. These conversations were constantly going on when I was in there. So I don't know if that rule's still in place today, or that change in operation, how they ran the prison and what have you, but it's certainly something that was put into place for the remainder of the time that I was in there. And I done that like pretty quickly once I got, sentenced. So at least a good year and a half, 2 years, maybe say 16 months, 18 months, whatever, that was the setup. I can't imagine they changed it back. So that's something I've never wanted to be like, oh, give me good credit for it or that. But I just feel like it needs to be acknowledged, the fact that, this wasn't just a monetary thing for me. This is something I'm so passionate about on every level, because it's touched me, it's fucked my life up, and it's affected me. So anything that I can do to affect these people, whether it's their living environment or their money or whatever, I'll go after it and I'll do it, But obviously that, you know what I mean, that was saying my calling now is to get my story out there and be heard, and to go through the child abuse inquiry and stuff, and to obviously get these people in the care system held accountable for their treatment towards me. But it just shows you the kind of ripple effect that it's had on me, and like why I've done so many fucking understandable things,
Yeah, and we're not looking at that as a society. We're judging an action of somebody without saying, how did they get there? And we talked about that a little bit on the last episode, but we're really failing people when we don't address the root cause of something. And that could be just discovering that somebody has an undeniable, chronic, permanent flaw that they need to be put away, or they need permanent care, right? But how do you address somebody who's just simply lost, betrayed by everybody, abused, left with no options, and we're treating them the same? Just like how you said, you're sitting in the same hallway as a sex offender, right? When your crimes are completely different. We're treating all abuse victims, whether they end up doing a crime that hurts somebody or it's just something harmless. We're treating all these crimes the same without saying, well, what did that person get through to go there, and address that personally and customize it to that person and their experiences, versus putting everybody in the same pot and saying, you're all the same, you're all a criminal. Okay, but what was the motivation behind it? And sure, if you committed a crime that was against the law with what you did, you took the sentence for it, and you went through that just under 2-year period of being in a prison, right? But it's like you said, what about the people that you were trying to expose their crimes? They didn't get looked at, So it's like we're looking at this so backwards in society, where we're not looking at root causes of things and then categorizing people based off that.
No, that's the problem. We never ask why. That's never a question why. Like, it was never asked by anybody, why I did what I did, or how I came to even know about these chat lines or anything at the beginning. Like, none of that was ever even a question on people's minds, because it's the first thing that I would be asking, like I'd be like, well, why did you feel the need to go and do that? Because I think my personality is I do take things to the extreme. I think it's just in my makeup. I just think that, when stuff happens, that I just overreact. I'm at a point in my life now where when people do things to me completely off subject, but portray me, or things happen in a way that's obviously just like bad people, I handle it so much better now, because I'm just aware of how quick I used to be at dealing with things in the wrong way. You know, if I could change time and go back, obviously I would try and change what had happened, but I'm certainly not going to live my life being held hostage to my past and constantly have that used against me to discredit me in any way, shape, or form. Like, I was even suing a plastic surgeon once, right, when I got my nose done, and they even tried to use that case against me. That's just how fucked up it is. But it's understandable because they were trying to prove that I was, it was about deception and dishonesty. That my nose and everything's fixed now and what have you, but I can remember that because they had to access my medical records, obviously there was the record of me being in jail, and the defense for the plastic surgeon guy at the time was trying to say, oh, this client of yours has got a history of being in jail, all completely unrelated. I got my claim, it was settled, everything went how it should have been. But it just shows you how quick people just look at it's literally, they just look at the front page and they go, that's it, my mind's made up, this is who this person is. This is really annoying, it keeps kind of like falling out. But yeah, it's so annoying that, like, even in situations like that in my life, I've constantly got it just kind of thrown back in my face. Like, I'm trying to think like how much it's affected me, because like this was something that somebody asked me recently, somebody that we're talking about, and he was like to me, you know, would you say that it's affected your life? You know, do you feel judged on it? And I was like to him, you know, yes and no. I think people that I have around me, or people that I've had around me, know the real me, and they get to know this, like the truth, if the conversation comes up and whatever. But it is something that I would say has affected me, because people who don't know me and they've only been told a version of the truth, or what they believe to be the truth, from not even so much what's online, but how somebody else has portrayed it to them, because they've got their own personal feelings they dislike towards me, it makes me sound all the more worse. You know, it really puts me in a position where I am painted blacker than black. And I'm just sick of that narrative being run now. As I said, I'm so determined to try and get as much attention onto this as possible, because I feel that it has contributed to so many other things in my life that, you know, we touched on earlier, that, you know, I'll get into about, you know, choices that I made after I left prison, you know, choices with regards to work, how I made money, you know, because obviously I went from making all that, you know, and then going into jail and stuff. I didn't just come out of jail and then just be like, oh, you know, like, I had an addiction to a lifestyle that I wanted to maintain and keep up, right? Let's be real about it. I was used to living a certain high quality life, and I wasn't prepared to just let that go. I don't know if that sounds bad or how that comes across, but I was fucking like, my attitude was like, everything needed to be the best of the best, and I needed to be taken care of and be treated like a fucking prince by myself. You know, nobody else done anything for me. I had to do it myself. I never had like a family or, you know, a partner or anybody that came into my life that provided for me. I had to go out and do all of that completely off my own back. And the fact that I came out of an establishment where, you know, I had no qualifications and all the stuff that went on, I'm surprised I was even able to do that. I'm surprised I was able to set up businesses, and I was able to do, you know, the other kind of work that I got into as well, you know, online and stuff. Like, I'm surprised I'm even able to function, you know. But yeah, that is another part of my story that, you know, we should get into, really, to be honest, because it is important and it is out there and people do know about it, and it's something that I accept and I own, you know, it is a factor in my life, but I have for a long time just kind of wanted to shut it out. But if I'm going to be amplifying my story and my past and what I've been through, there's always going to be people there that are going to want to come out and try and discredit me in any way, shape, or form, especially with regards to the controversy surrounding that school. And because they've got such a clean cut, like, perfect image, and there has been minimum reporting regarding that Kibble school. Mind you, we're saying I'll tag them in the post as well. You need to do that, actually. I'm going to do that. I'm sure I did tag them. But if I'm bringing so much attention to that, then there is going to be somebody that's going to come up from somewhere, some fucking low life, and they're going to be like, oh, you know, he's done this, he's done that. Like, I'm saying now as me, you know, like, I don't just own what's happened and the choices that I've made. I own everything that I've done in my life, and I own it because I've walked away from it as well. I'm seeing things from a completely different perspective now. Like, when I got into the escorting industry, the most ironic thing about it all is because that was my cover story for so long. it's almost like, I wouldn't say I manifested it, right? But, you know, for 4 or 5 years or whatever, the blackmailing was going on. I had a lot of money that I was unaccountable, like I couldn't account for it. So people would always be like, how have you got, you know, a fucking chauffeur driven car, and how are you living this kind of life and whatever and whatever. So the quickest thing for me to say at the time without realizing it was, oh, I'm an escort. And then that was just kind of like what I was known as. And then obviously I came out of jail, and that was something that I obviously, you know, said to people, you know, it wasn't true, because it wasn't true. I wasn't an escort at that point. But after, obviously, you know, I would say probably about a year after being out of jail, or maybe less, maybe 8 months, 10 months or whatever. But there was a period where I was just kind of like, I don't know what I was doing to get money or survive. I think I was literally just living off the family that I was around at the time, but it was a very short period of time. But because a lot of my friends and stuff at that point, the people that had been coming to visit me, and just people I knew that before I ended up in jail and whatever, a lot of the girls and that I knew and things, they were in the escorting industry. So it was inevitable that it was going to be put on me at one point. And I did go down that path, I'm not going to lie. That's something that's a big part of my story, because it kind of derailed me in the sense that, you know, it was something that was a choice that I made, but it was a choice that I made based on what other choices that were made available to me. You've got to remember, right? I know, like, my case wasn't high profile, but if somebody's meeting somebody, we're living in a generation now where people Google almost everybody that they have any kind of encounter with. And when they put my name into Google, that's all that stuff's going to come up online. I'm not saying that I would have went for a conventional job anyway, because I was kind of accustomed to a quality of life that would never have been able to meet, right? So I'm being honest about it. It's probably something that would never have affected me in that aspect. But let's be real here. How many job opportunities would have been available to me, given the fact that I can remember when I was obviously applying for flats and things like that, like people would Google me and stuff and come back. Sometimes it would never have an effect, because either I knew the landlords or whatever, or I was putting down a big enough deposit, or paying like fucking 6 months rent up front and whatever. So the monetary aspect of it was covered, but it just gave me an insight very early on that, you know, you're constantly getting checked up on, and people are constantly being made aware of that in your past. So it kind of drilled more into my head that I had made the right choice in the direction of like I hate like career. It's not a fucking career, but like that's the choice that I made to go down that road. It kind of confirmed it to me, if that makes sense, Emma, because I thought, well, if everybody's Googling you and checking you out, and you're being judged, and people are saying this and saying that, how are you going to be employable with a criminal record? And not just a criminal record, but something that just seems to be like the first thing that people seem to, you know, hear about you. You know, it doesn't paint a very good picture. And this is when there was a lot of articles up about me. I've, as I said, got a lot of it taken down. But this is when there was a lot of articles up about me. And when you read them, you'll understand yourself. You know, when people are reading all this shit that I've claimed to have done to former friends and harassed them and that, which was just all fucking lies and bullshit, it paints me as just a really fucking dangerous, twisted, nasty, fucked up person. So I can understand why a lot of people have kept their distance and drawn up the conclusions they have. Because if I was reading that and I wasn't me, I would be thinking the same. So yeah, that opens up the other part of this, and how I ended up getting into, you know, the whole escorting industry. And obviously I went on and only until like a couple of years ago, or about a year and a half ago, I have pulled myself away from it. I was obviously doing OnlyFans and stuff. All things that I'm just like, whoa, I'm just against it now. I'm not against it in the sense of like, if that's what you want to do, then do it. I know a lot of people that do it and it works well for them, but it's just, for me, everything like that, it just feels completely, it just doesn't feel natural. Because when I was doing a lot of those things, I was pretending to be somebody that, once again, I wasn't. So I was doing a lot of financial domination as well. And that was like a lot of, basically, it's like a legal form of blackmail. So it was quite similar to what I was doing on the chat lines. Only difference is that these guys were, one, they were paying for it, and two, they weren't fucking pedophiles. But they wanted to be like sort of like held in a position like online and whatever, and, you know, threatened for money and whatever. And I used to always get really nervous thinking, you know, one of these guys could twist that around, and because of my past, it could go against me. So I'd get them like openly, like recordedly, like committing to like full consent of this happening, if that makes sense. But I've just led such a fucking fucked up life, and I have made a lot of choices, but it's, as I said, don't judge people because you don't know the choices that they had to choose from. And I never had a whole selection of choices, and I never came out of jail with a million doors open to me and people saying, oh, we want to help you, we want this and we want that. I do remember one woman reaching out to me and saying, oh, she wanted to help me write a book and everything. And I fucking regret that. I wish I had took her up on that, but I wasn't in the same mindset as I am now. Obviously, I'm a lot fucking older. I'm 30 now. But like when I got out of jail, I was like 20, 21 years old. I wasn't thinking like anything like that. I wasn't convinced, but a lot of people around me were like, just get on with your life and whatever, and it'll go away. But this has never went away. This is why I'm talking about it to you to this day, because it's filtered through and other factors in my life. You know, it's as I said, it's a domino ripple effect. Like I would never have got into the escort, and I wouldn't have made a lot of the choices that I'd made, I think, if it wasn't for the environments that I grew up and developed in. You know, like it annoys me so much because these care environments are supposed to take you out of unsafe environments when they're putting you in unsafe environments. So that is like my big calling in this. That's like my big sledgehammer, where I want people to wake up and understand that I was put in an environment that made me very much what I've turned out to be. Like that has contributed massively to a lot of the choices and decisions, because obviously I never had a lot of worth about myself either, let's be honest. You know, I don't think nobody chooses that. Like what I said to you before, right? When you're dealing with escorting and you're meeting up with clients and stuff, right? There's like a big elephant in the room that's never really spoken about, right? And I did develop a lot of close relationships with some of these guys that went on to probably more than what they should have and ended up in fucking heartbreak and whatever, because I was convinced I was in love and they were convinced they were in love and whatever. But it kind of was what it was. But you're dealing with mental health so much as well, because one, I'm obviously severely damaged by everything that I've been through. And then on the other hand, you're dealing with a guy who is either going through a lot of shit in his marriage and he doesn't love his wife. And you're basically sitting here dealing with like counseling sessions. And I can laugh about it because like, it is a part of my life that like, there's so many stories I could tell you that it's just fucked up. But like, I'm sitting there dealing with these guys and, you know, they're coming to meet me, and wherever I was working, if it was in a hotel or whatever, you know, I've spent my life living out of hotels, to be honest with you. Like, I gave up my last apartment back in 2019, and since then I've been with a sort of relative recently on and off, but for the past like 2 years or whatever, I've just been all over the place. And I think that goes back to the care thing, just never been able to settle down with roots, always been on the go. I went over to Dubai last year, and then obviously I ended up coming back just before the whole fucking lockdown carry on and everything. Mentally, I just wasn't in the right place. I just, you know, I need to deal with the things that I'm dealing with now. This needs to be addressed for me in order to get some kind of ownership of the whole story and narrative that's been spun around me, so that I can actually do something worthwhile with my life. Like I can't say to you, I've got this project on the go, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, because nothing like that's really happening for me. But I feel that those things should naturally start falling into place, because I've made a lot of sacrifices. I could be out there making thousands right now, but I've chosen not to, because it's not authentic, it's not what I want to do. It's a very disturbing way of living your life. I don't care who tries to sit and glamorize it and say, oh, this is really good for you, this is, you know, like it's quick, fast, easy money. Yeah, it's all of those things, but it does, at the end of the day, it doesn't leave you feeling good about yourself. When you're left sitting at home at night on your own, or for me in a fucking hotel or wherever the fuck I am, you're left sitting questioning, like, you know, like, is this as good as it gets, you know, sort of thing for me. And that's a horrible position to be in, because I know that I've got so much more to offer than what I've been able to offer, if that makes sense.
No, this is a really good point that you're bringing up, because there is a staggering statistic on abuse victims that get into the adult entertainment industry, whether that's stripping, prostitution, films, webcamming, whatever it is. A lot of the people that get into this industry, that was the better of all the choices they were dealt too. And there's so
Yeah.
many abuse victims and trafficking victims that it's almost a natural progression, especially because you said a lot of them also were under the control of somebody, were in a system, they got out, and so they don't have any work experience. They have severe
Yeah.
trauma. So even thinking about like being a waitress or being in an environment that you're with a lot of people is very triggering and can elicit the PTSD response in them. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's almost a natural progression a lot of times, which is really sad, you know, because I live in Las Vegas, right? And they glorify prostitution, they glorify strip clubs. And people
Yeah.
look to it like it's this really cool thing that you do whenever you come to Las Vegas. You go to the cool strip clubs and you buy these $1,000 bottles of alcohol and you get lap dances.
Yeah.
And we're losing a really important point of addressing the psychology behind how a person made that choice, how that was the best choice in their life. Because period, that's it. If there was something that was better than that, they would have taken that. Same thing with you,
Oh
right?
yeah, 100%.
And so we're
Yeah.
not offering empathy to people and saying, why was that the choice that you made? Right. And more often than not, I haven't met anybody that I've met that's gotten out of the adult entertainment industry that says, I am so happy that I went in there. It was the best experience ever. All of them say it's because I was so damaged because I couldn't get a job. It was the only choice that I had. And if there was other choices, that was the best choice that I had. And I think
Yeah.
also addressing the fact that sexual abuse victims are groomed to believe that their body is their worth and their sexuality and what they can provide to another person with their body. And so you
Yeah.
have these beliefs that are instilled in children that, oh, your worth is depicted on your body and what you do with it and how sexual you are and what you can do to please me, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
if that's not addressed too, where a healthy adult comes in and helps unprogram that child or that teenager to say, no, you're worth so much more than that. You never had that intervention. And so many trafficking victims and abuse survivors, they don't have that healthy relationship and that guiding light that comes into their life that says you're worth so much more than that. And just the
See, but
difference that something like
see,
that.
that's so true.
Yeah. So it's like you almost have this unconscious belief that I'm only worth something if I'm having sex with somebody or if I'm glorifying my body. Like my vessel is my worth. It's not my personality doesn't matter. My dreams don't
Yeah.
matter. My potential doesn't matter. It's just this shell that I'm in.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And it's like one thing I want to say is well, like, see when you're in that industry, because obviously like I was predominantly doing like financial domination. So that was like it's a sexual thrill kick for them. Like they're getting something sexual out of it. But because a lot of it's online, it's non-sexual contact with me. But then obviously I was doing some escorting jobs and things like that as well. But I'm so fucking glad that I never got into porn and stuff because like that is something that was like it was there, it was open, it was available. I'd been approached, I had approached people, I'd spoke to people. I had a lot of friends that were in porn. Like I was in and around that world so deeply that it was such an open door if I'd went there. And I'm just so thankful that like even though I've done like and I had done like OnlyFans and there is videos of me out there, but there's no content of me out there like professionally like working. I'm just glad that something was holding me back. I don't know what, but I just kind of never got into that. And I knew that like so many people are like, if you do this, you'll take off so much and your OnlyFans will explode. And, like everybody was like basically saying, if you get like into a high profile, what's the word I'm looking for? A high profile label or business, like a porn production company or whatever. If you get in there and you do something and it goes viral or whatever, then that's going to drive so much traffic to your OnlyFans page or your financial domination page or whatever, and you're going to make shitloads of money. And so it was constantly in the back of my mind. I was constantly thinking, oh, this will take it to the next level, this will take it to the next level. And then I just think just before the whole lockdown stuff last year and when I came back from Dubai and whatever, I just think something just kind of shifted in my brain. There was a lot of other stuff going on in my life as well, just family bullshit and crap and whatever. And I think I feel like two plates in my brain, like just kind of just went to like being like that to like just unbalanced, but in in a good and a bad way. And it just kind of made me just stop and slow down, because my life had always been so fast and everything was just about making money and living, going here and getting this done and getting that done. And it was just a constant like cycle of just me being motivated by, we're constantly wanting to go up the ladder and whatever. And I just feel now like, yeah, like I'm glad that I never done that. There was, I don't know, there must have been some little fucking angel inside me that was like, if you do this, this will just be something that, you know, you'll regret or whatever. And you'll probably be fucking abused or exploited even further by these companies, and you could be tied into a contract, and you might end up you might do one and then you might end up doing a whole fucking load. So I'm glad that, you know, I've always felt like I've kind of been in control of it to some degree, but like what you said, I've never really been fully in control of it because I've not had a whole of choices, you know, kind of choose from. And if I did, I certainly wouldn't have chosen that. Like, see people like Bella Thorne and people like her who really like put the whole OnlyFans thing out there. Like, I think she's like the top maker, but it's obviously because she's a celebrity at the same time. They're just creating such an industry where, you know, I've got younger relatives and I've overheard conversations with young girls and stuff, young guys, even young boys, whatever you want to call them, talking about this. It's been so normalized now, you know, like to the point that it's like, it's so acceptable. Like, it's just fucked up, you know. Like, I've come out and I've decided to be open and honest about my escorting, but I'd say on the flip side, the thing that's made me kind of come out and be so open and honest about it is because society has normalized the OnlyFans factor side here, which is a sex work industry. So I think if people are doing OnlyFans, you know, it's hard for them to say, well, you know, you've done escorting or whatever, because it's all connected, it's all in the same basket. But, you know, it's made, I suppose, I don't know how to kind of word it, but like, I've been able to kind of own, I think I would have came out and owned my shit anyway, because you've kind of got to, when you're dealing with the situation that I'm obviously finding myself in now. But I just feel like in the next 10 years, really, is this how the world's going? Like, fucking, I feel sometimes like it's just, we're just going down such a wrong avenue where, you know, everything just being so normalized and young girls just waiting until they're 18 to get into the industry and to start, you know, it's just destructive. It never ends well, you know, and for the very handful, select few people who it makes a lot of money for, they might be living the fucking dream, but they're suffering for it emotionally in other ways. And you never see these people have stable, structural relationships. People that have been in that industry, this is where I was wanting to talk about like the intimacy issues and stuff like that as well, which I do think this is really important, because it's definitely affected me, even though I've been in narcissistic abusive relationships, particularly just one person, which opened my eyes up to a whole world of stuff, because I never even knew what the word narcissist meant until that point. And it just put me on a whole spiral. I think that kind of contributed a lot to kind of me coming away from a lot of shit, because I never did any escorting or anything when I was with this person. So I was rattling up a whole load of fucking debt on credit cards and stuff, which I've now thankfully got clear. I managed to get all my fucking debt written off, so I'm completely debt free now. But like, I was obviously so much in love with this person and committed to them that I never done any of that shit whatsoever. But the intimacy issues that I think it gave me, even though that one of them was a narcissist and there was one guy I was with who was an escort and stuff as well, and that's fucked up, you know, we were doing fucking jobs and stuff together. It's just no normal. But I think it has kind of made me, it's given me intimate issues in two ways, because it's made me feel like, it's hard to explain without going into detail, but one thing I will say, like, because you've kind of been in a world where you've seen so much cheating and dishonesty and guys cheating on their wives and their girlfriends and whatever, like, you see, you have so many, like, you find it hard to trust because you've been on the other side of that. Now, even though you're not the one that's been in the relationship, you're 99% of the people you're dealing with, whether it's online or face to face, they're married. You know, very, very few, I don't think I ever had a client or anybody I ever dealt with or worked with who was single or open or whatever. Like, they were all married. So that always used to play on my mind, because I was like, you know, you just can't trust anybody because everybody's leading a double life. You know, I was leading a double life. I felt like, you know, even though I was quite bold and I was showing my face and I was up on these websites and I was paying for the best adverts. So everybody over the fucking UK was seeing my face and what I was doing. And, you know, like I had like no fucking shame at that point. But like, yeah, fucking, what am I even saying here? Yeah, it does give you, it gives you a lot of problems. It gives you problems just trying to build up a proper meaningful connection with someone, because you've just seen like the worst sides of society and the worst sides of deceit and dishonesty. And so many of my friends who've been in the escorting industry, and some of them, like, I don't talk to anybody from that world now. I've cut everybody out. I'm like on a detox. I don't want to be around any of that shit. I have nothing against them. A lot of them have got out of it themselves as well, and they've went down and they've made positive changes in their life. But I just feel like so many of them have said the same thing, that they've found it so hard to find somebody, not just because they've had issues with trust, but just even sexually, and being able to connect with somebody in an intimate way, because they were so used to doing it in a transactional manner that it just totally took away. They couldn't connect with them, and they found it hard. And I knew a lot of friends, even myself, that they would have to take drugs, or they would take certain things that would make them feel like a love connection. And it's horrible, because it's stealing your love from you. It's stealing the one thing that you've got to give to people, because you've shut it off for so long. And I've got so much fucking love to give, but I've had to shut it off for so long, because I've been working as a robot, and I've not been Kevin. I've been pretending to be every other fucking guy apart from myself, you know. So yes, it is what it is. So I just hope that with the sacrifices that I've made and the good choices and walking away from so much, that I'll find whatever my path in life is supposed to be, you know.
You have such a bright path in front of you. I know
I hope
before we
so.
started filming, but just the fact that you're here today talking about this with a smile on your face, you're healthy, you're not addicted to drugs, you're not in the adult industry in any type of way, you're not on the street, you're not dead. You are an anomaly. You are a walking miracle. The fact that you are here today to be able to talk to us about this, you know, because so many people never get out. And when they do, if they do, they end up going back into some capacity, whether that's how they make their money, is by webcamming. Like, you're still in the system, even if it's not you being physically abused, like what you came from, right? You're still putting yourself back in an abusive system that's manipulative to your potential, and it's proliferating the same patterns that you've had your whole life. You know, it's feeding that machine still, and you're not escaping. And you are just, it's amazing how far you've come and the things that you've done. And even so, when Samantha Brown was on here, she did some similar things, in a sense of, she entered the adult film industry, made a ton of money, right? And I looked at her, and I was talking to her one day, and I felt the same whenever you were talking. It's like, you guys are natural entrepreneurs. You did it in a very unconventional way, but you have a knack of being an entrepreneur. You had no guidance. You started businesses while you were being horrifically abused and in these awful systems. You somehow figured out a way to create work for yourself, in a sense, and to look for possibilities in this really dire environment that gave you no options. You created stuff. And so even though it might not have been in the productive way that maybe you would do today, it's amazing seeing what a human can do when all odds are against them, and every single person that walks in their life wants to break their spirit. And you've always said, no, you're not going to break me. I'm going to find a way out of this. It might be hard and it might get me in trouble if I do it, but what are my options here? Because I don't want to stay here, you know. And that to me is so inspiring, to see that, and to see just how unbreakable we actually are, and what a miracle it is that somebody like you is here talking about this today, is smiling, is healthy. What an inspiration you are, Kevin. Like,
I hope so.
Inspired by you.
I hope so. It's been hard. It's been fucking hell of a difficult journey to come through, and then to see it from the other side and just be like, look, wait a minute, I'm walking away. I'm turning my back on a lot of things that people they're trapped, and they're not just trapped, but they're connected to it because of the money. So they're just like, oh, I need it because of the money. Money to me just has no value now, Emma. I don't know what it is. Like, I'll probably find, like, as I said, I did set up, like, I had a delivery franchise at one point. I did set up businesses and stuff. There was a lot of things that I got into and then I came out of, because, like, you know, I was in the industry, so I was kind of all over the place. And, you know, if I had the opportunity to do a big job, or there was a few grand in something and I was running this business, it was kind of getting in the way. It was clashing. I think now that I've kind of like shut all that away, I can hopefully just focus on stuff that is like real and authentic to me, and getting my story out there is the main thing. Getting like some sort of acknowledgement and some kind of justice from the care system and an apology is like the big main, that is what I'm kind of going for, and change as well. And just, you know, this whole celebrity culture as well, we need to stop idolizing fucking all these like Instagram models and people that are like doing nothing for you other than just exploiting you and making you feel absolutely shit about your life. Like, start following pages and people that have got substance and purpose. And even if they're people that have been through that, but they can now see it from what it actually is. And it is just an abuse factor. That's all it is. It's a factory full of damaged and abused people. And you'll get people that will come on and they'll totally say, well, you know, I'm empowered because I made this choice and it's me. And that might be all fine, very well. And if that's how you want to roll, then I can't criticize it. I've fucking done it myself. But I think you've got to also realize that, you know, because a lot of girls are, and even guys as well, you know, I knew a lot of obviously guys as well, but a lot of them came from homes that you would be quite surprised. Not all of them came from backgrounds that were like predominantly care. Some of them came from backgrounds where their family had a lot of money, they were quite wealthy, and I used to sit and like scratch my head and be thinking, how did you end up like this? And I would talk to them and we would kind of unravel there was different levels of abuse that they had been through. Maybe it wasn't sexual and physical and, as you know, traumatic like mine, but they were maybe like emotionally neglected so badly by their mum and dad and overlooked, or, you know, there was a favorite child and they were kind of just shut out. So there's other ways that people end up in this industry, not just because it's like, you know, care and crime and abuse and whatever. It can just be just lacky interest, lacky anybody being there for them. Like, one of the things that I've always really struggled with as well is these success stories. And this is what I think I'm trying to do by speaking out, by trying to like obviously help myself, is that people always say, you know, if it wasn't for that one person, I would never have been able to change or turn my life around. Some people never get that one person. I've never had one person step in and help me in my life. And so many people have been around and known what has happened and what I've been through, whether it's been abusive relationships or all of that stuff in the past. I've never had one person ever truly come out, and I've always been the counsellor. I've always been the person that's been sat and had to listen to hours and hours and hours and days of other people's traumas and tribulations and whatever. I've never had somebody sit down and really invest time in helping me. I've just had to just go it my own way, you know. And my point I'm making is when you read those stories, it does kind of make me think like, no, well, you know, how come I've never came across a mentor or someone who's going to help me, kind of, because they're obviously, I do have skills, I have good traits, there is something there that can come of this life. I'm not going to just be somebody that's going to be a nameless statistic. And this earpiece is so fucking annoying. I don't know why it keeps like nearly falling out. I'm trying to like balance it, but it's like constantly just like ready to come out my ear.
Are those the iPhone ones?
Yeah, the pro ones, and they've got
I can't even use those because they like hurt my ear, and yeah, they fall out. I'm like, how do people
wear these? Yeah, they normally sit in really well because the little silicone thing clips right in, so they're normally really comfortable, but for some reason they just seem to be falling out. I don't know. Maybe it's a new way science fiction that these fucking earpods won't even sit in properly, but I'm pushing it right in and it just seems to keep coming out. Maybe I need to put a different size in or something. But I just refuse to be a nameless statistic, like somebody who did this or did that. Like, there's just so much more to me. And I just feel like, see, when I did set up the businesses that I had, like when I had that delivery franchise and I sold it and I managed to get good money for it, I sold it just as sort of Deliveroo were ready to take off. So it was an ideal time because Deliveroo is the monopoly now. It's like Deliveroo and Uber Eats and whatever. This was like another thing that was going on. It was one delivery actually. I think some people have still got franchises, but I sold my one. But I just feel like, see like, and obviously the money, just, I don't know what happened to the money, but I mean, like, if I make those choices now that I'm out of the whole game, basically, I think I'm clearer headed, I'm older, I've put the money to better use. Like, for me, it was always just spending and splurging on like the best of this, the best of that, labels, constantly buying this. And I don't know, I feel like when you've been, like, I've never been provided, because nobody's ever provided it for me, but you just lose, see, eventually, like, nice things just have nothing to them. When you can't enjoy it with somebody, or you've not got a life that's got any real meaning and purpose, and you're doing something that deep down you don't want to be doing, it doesn't matter how much you're wearing or how much money you've got in your bank or your wallet, you're always going to feel that just level undervalued, and just mean it, like, it's just never enough. And that's what causes people to keep chasing it more and more. And sometimes that's people's drive, and they do end up making loads of money. But I think a lot of these people, they never end up fixed. You know, that's the thing. And you can correct your viewpoint on these things. You can look at it and see it for what it is, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we feel, at least my own personal experience, I don't always recognize that if I want something external of me, if I'm driven to get something that's outside of me, that a lot of times that's because there's a hole inside of me that needs filled that I'm not filling. And so I'm looking for something out here to fill that gap or to fill that void, versus saying, okay, why do you desire money so bad? Or why are you chasing this thing? Why do you want that so bad? And a lot of times I found, for me, it's because I'm not self-fulfilling something that I need fulfilled in me. Right. And I think we do that with money. We think that, okay, I have this void in me, I have this gap in me, I have this darkness in me, I don't feel good. That'll make me feel better. But you realize that it doesn't change anything inside of you. It might change what's outside of you, but if you don't feel good here, it's like you said, how do you enjoy anything outside of you if you don't even enjoy where you're at, right? You can't even enjoy this body of ours and in this mind and in your heart. Nothing outside of you is going to feel good either. You know, we have to master this first. And that's so important that you found that out. And it's ironic because the industry that you got into with escorting, you know, that adult films, stripping, it's all a quick fix to get money too. It's you can proliferate money very quickly in those industries. And I think that that's striking for some people to get in, especially out here in Las Vegas. You know, there's this beautiful like glamour attached to it. And so it's like kids are being exposed to that and saying, I want to be like that whenever I get older. Right. But you find that inner peace, love, healing, that's really where we get rich, you know, and the money that comes outside of us, that's great, but it feels great only when you feel good inside, and really only when you're doing something that's really fulfilling outside of you too, right? It doesn't feel good if you're making money in a way that goes against who you are and it goes against your integrity. It feels dirty almost to get money. And it's like, gosh, I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel good about how I'm even making this, right? Where if you feel good about yourself, you're doing something that you love, that you're good at, that you're excited about, and then you get money, it feels good then, right? But there's such a misconception in society. A lot of people are chasing that right now and saying, what's next? What's next? What's next? Like this dopamine hit. And it's like, wait a minute, what's going on in you? Like, what are you trying to actually cover for? You know, what is money a cover up for? Because it is a lot of times.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. It's a massive cover up. I think, like, obviously it's so cliche in saying this because everybody knows it, but like, see, our generation, like, just with social media and stuff, it's just put so much pressure on people to feel that they need to be successful because it's just constantly like everything's just money, money, money. And it's like, I don't know, I just feel like I was a part of that mindset for so long, but now I'm just like, I'm just quite happy. I genuinely know that with what I've been through in my life, and I just want peace. I think I'm addicted to peace more than I'm addicted to anything else. I've been addicted to like diazepam, you know, them diazepam tablets, benzodiazepines. I've been addicted to them, and this is a big part of my case against the child abuse. I've been addicted to them since I was in care. And I'm still trying to just basically come off them now. And I think that's had me in such a cloud as well. You know, like I've been under a benzo cloud for so long. I think it's caused me some sort of neurological damage, however the fuck you pronounce it, but it certainly affected things like my coordination, like just basic things. Like I've never been able to drive, like it's affected so many things. And I've never really seen the world properly as a fully fledged adult out of a benzo cloud, like without being under the influence of these tablets. But with social media, I think you've just got to be really selective with who you follow, take breaks. I came off Instagram for 18 months, done a massive detox. I think it's the best I've ever felt. But it's hard because if you're trying to use it to get like a message out there and connect with people and stuff, then you kind of need it. But you've just got to be very conscientious. Like when I look at the explore page and I constantly see things Kardashian related, I just constantly put not interested, not interested, not interested, so that the algorithm will eventually just show me the things that I want to see, rather than constantly getting this whole Hollywood narrative shoved down my throat, which I'm just sick of seeing. I'm sick of seeing things and watching content that's just, it's just not what I'm about. Like it's something I don't want to consume, and it's unhealthy. It's really, really unhealthy. So that is like my way of dealing with that sort of stuff. But it's hard, like it is difficult. It's a battle that we've got to go through. But on the flip side, we've never been more aware. That's a good thing. Like this generation's never been more aware than the other generations. I think the awareness has been there, but we've never been able to quite connect, and put like an amplifier on our voices and get it fucking out there, whatever the message is. So it's got a good cause and it needs to stay for that. But on the flip side, it can be just as detrimental to your health. So that's why I'm always just quite conscientious about like how much time I actually try and spend online, rather than, I just like what I was saying the other day when we were messaging. I was like, I'm going to literally just move out into a fucking field and be self-sufficient and like build my own house and just like live off the land. Like if I could find a little community and do that, I think that would be amazing, because there's so many people that do.
Oh yeah.
I was watching a documentary the other night there, and it was like these people who like literally live like that. They've got electricity and stuff, so they're not like completely deprived, but they're like removed from society and they live way off the grid. And they're like proper at peace. Like they have no health problems. They're not phoning up the doctor all the time. They're not taking antidepressants. They're not stressing out about just basic bullshit crap. Like they're actually at peace. And I'm just so jealous. That's the people I envy. Do you know what I mean? Rather than looking at all this other crap, I envy that, because that's what I'd love to get into. I'd love to live like that, or at least try it out and see how well I cope. But I'm so down for something like that,
Dude, me too. Let's do it. I was messaging you. I'm like, how do we go off grid? We need a tiny home community. Anybody listening to help us out, we message us, because we're down.
Yeah, message us and let us know where you are. Give it away. It's like that film, The Beach.
Yes.
With Leonardo DiCaprio, like something like that. That would be amazing. Just like living away from everything and just keeping it a secret. It sounds, do you know what I mean? Because it's no Hollywood. People, there is small communities that do live like that. It's just obviously they keep it private because they don't want people turning up and being like, "Look, we want to move in." But you could create it yourself. Like I would love to live like that. I honestly would. I think it would just bring me to just be in touch with nature and just be like completely part of the world, rather than be part of this fucking society that we live in now that is just, I don't know how to even describe it. I think it's why I spend so much time in bed. I think I spend so much time in bed because there's just so much negative energy out there. There's so much going on, and it's just constant conflict and divide. That's all I ever see. That's why I never get involved in arguments and debates with people over political topics and that, because I just see it for what it is. It's just propaganda to have people divided and at war and arguing over shit that really at the end of the day means nothing. Like just go out there and live your best life, but just keep away from that, because that's more dangerous than any drug that you'll take. It just totally distorts your mind.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever, people are looking for more heart-based conversations, and they are looking for people like you, where 5 years ago they would have been following the Kardashians, right? I think a lot of people are getting into that mindset and saying, this content doesn't make me happy. It just makes me feel like I'm constantly lacking looks or money or material things. And it's not, it's all manufactured. We know that so much of that is just a play. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is completely happy with their life or lacks insecurities. That's almost abusive in itself to continually absorb all of that content whenever you have the ability to go look for more heart-based conversations and to create them, to be vulnerable and talk about real things. And that's why you're such a breath of fresh air, Kevin. Like, I love that you're willing to have these conversations. And I know that you're going to inspire so many people in the future, present, and generations from now are going to be inspired by you coming forth and paving the way for people to have a voice about things that are non-traditional to talk about. And I appreciate that. And I encourage everybody to go follow you. Can you tell people where they can find you on social media?
Just my name, Kevin Sutherland, with an X on Instagram. That's the only profile that I use that I'm on. I'm not on Facebook or anything like that anymore. So that's where to find me.
And where does this leave you now? What do you need from people? What can people do to help support you? Or
I don't know, like, I think just now I'm just, as I said, I'm just kind of dealing with this battle, just like, as I said, I want to get, you know, attention drawn to the case and what happened years ago, and obviously, you know, everything that we've discussed in this interview and what we've done the last time, and just yeah, like, that's something I've kind of got to do myself. And obviously I'm going up against a big system when I give my evidence and stuff. I spoke to a lawyer guy the other day. He's going to get back in touch with me, but I don't know, with regards to support, I don't know, just I would like to speak to other people that are maybe in a similar situation. I know it's like a big off chance, but I know that there was boys at that school that I was at. I would love to try and connect with anybody that has been at that school that's got anywhere near a similar experience that I went through with regards to how I was treated. Because obviously, you know, I would like to, I know that other stuff went on. Mind, I told you there was an article in 2004, there was a big thing that came out about the school, and then it was all hushed up and closed down. So I would like to find out, like, you know, and that was exactly when I was there. And I witnessed a lot of the violence and just a lot of the, like, the ways that they treated the kids and stuff there. So I would love to connect with people like that. But a lot of the boys' names I can't remember. And that was so long ago. So that would kind of maybe help me, because there's nobody that I'm in touch with now that I was ever through care with. And I would like to find out, you know, like, are they going to the inquiry? Are they speaking up? Did anything happen to them? But that's kind of my mission, is to find, you know, like, what else happened there, not just what happened to me, but what is the full picture, because I witnessed a lot that happened to other boys in the sense of, like, violence and really quite serious violent attacks. And mind, I told you, they played on the mindset and the concept of these young boys coming from family homes where they felt that if they reported things to the police, it was wrong. So they were picking on, like, the most vulnerable when it came to being really violent. I honestly think some of the staff who used to come into work and I'd had, like, an argument with their partner or whatever, and they would take it out on the kids, and not just verbally but physically, you know. And that's the kind of people that they were employing. It was literally just like people they had picked up off the street. And it annoys me because this Kibble schools put out there as, like, one of these, it's not like an elitist school, but it's put out as, you know, one of these really good, you know, establishments, and it's got, you know, like a day centre, and it's got a residential centre and a secure unit, and now they're fostering kids, and they've branched out into every sector of the sort of childcare system. And I just feel like they need fucking exposed for who they are, because they contributed so much to my wrongful development in some ways. I don't know, I'm trying to take the positive out of it, because, like you said, I have managed to be self-sufficient and survive a lot on my own, but I was left no choice. I should never have been put through anywhere near close to what I was put through. And it's the aftercare as well, you know, when they let people out of care, they're not really there for them, as in, you know, how they integrate back into society or life skills or whatever. They're really lacking in that area as well. So that's my mission. I'd like to team up with people that are passionate about those kind of causes, specifically here as well, and just see what comes of it, you know. But that's kind of where my mind is now. But I'm living a quiet life now. That's me. Like, I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just fucking living a quiet life and just trying to, you know, once I get through this, and I'll see what happens, you know. I want to get back to, you know, obviously traveling and going about and seeing people and stuff. So, because I've not really got a lot of friends here, like in this part of where I am just now. Like, I've not got a lot of friends here. I don't really speak to anybody. So, a lot of my friends are kind of scattered all over the place. So, I want to travel and get myself on the road, but I need to deal with this tablet situation, which I'm dealing with really well. And obviously, once the inquiry is out of the way, I think I eventually just want to move away from here for good, you know, like genuinely just get out of this country for good.
I'm so honored to know you and to call you a friend. And you always have
you too, thank you.
If you come over to America, you're always welcome to stay in my spare bedroom. And I'm sure a lot of people here would love to meet you. So I would love if you came over here. So whenever you do travel, make sure you come visit.
I'll let you know. Yeah, no, I'll definitely let you know. Yeah, no, Vegas is a place I've always thought of visiting, like, but yeah. But yeah, no, it's fucking ear thing, eh? It's like, I'm literally going to fix this later. But yeah, no, it's been good to come on. And as I said, I think we've pretty much covered everything. Like, if there's anything that anybody ever wanted to know or ask me, my life's an open book now. I've got no secrets. I'm not holding anything back. There's nothing that anybody can possibly come and say about me or to me or whatever that I'm not going to take ownership. And if it's lies, I'll say it's lies. If it's true, I'll say it's true. I've got nothing to gain by being, you know, silent or lying about anything now. I'm putting myself out there. And when you put yourself out there, you are open to so many different responses from people. So I'm prepared. But if anybody was going to say anything about me and it was nasty, whatever, it's not, I wouldn't say I'm bulletproof, but look at what I've been through. It's very unlikely that they're going to have an impact on me considering what I'm up against already. So I would just say be mindful of that. But I'm not wanting to connect with that. I'm wanting to connect with genuine, authentic people that are on the same kind of path, you know.
If anybody tries to bully you, they can come talk to you because I am standing right next to you. So, and you have a whole army of people standing next to you. So anybody who wants to, you're barking up a big tree because there's a lot of people on Kevin's side right now, including me. So you don't want to do that. And screw anybody who does, because if you're going to pick on survivors, what the hell does that say about you? Sorry about it, but
I know.
do that on my channel, you're getting fucking deleted, you're getting banned, and you're getting reported, period. I don't have any tolerance for that shit. I stand by you 100%. And you're absolutely amazing. I appreciate you coming on and sharing, Kevin. Your story is important. One, because there's so much to learn from it for people who haven't gone through it. Two, you've experienced so many different types of abuse and side effects that I think a lot of people can relate to in some way, shape, or form. You touch on a lot of different elements that people might go through one thing that you've gone through, and you're able to help encourage and educate people on many different aspects of the system that very few know about. And for three, you were so grossly misrepresented in the media's portrayal of you. And it's so important that your side of the story gets out from you and in the proper sequence, chronology, and the right way that it deserves to be represented. Because I don't know of a single person who couldn't listen to your story and absolutely empathize with you and say, what the hell would I have done if I was him? I would have done all the same things. In fact, I would have been even worse off than him, you know? So your story is important for so many reasons. And I'm so grateful that you came on. And for people listening, please connect with Kevin. If you have a podcast, invite him on. If you know somebody that has a podcast or a platform that could feature his voice, connect them. He's so easy to connect with. And I'll link all of his stuff below so you guys can easily connect with him. I encourage you guys to go follow him on Instagram. He has an absolutely beautiful soul, as you can tell, and that emanates through his social media too. He is a bright light, and he provides that type of content that we were just talking about. That's not manufactured, and it's real, and it makes you happy, and it brings joy to your heart to look at and to read, and it's positive. And we need more of that. We need to start following survivors and people that have material that comes from their heart that they're promoting, instead of just the blue check marks that have all the manufactured same propaganda that we see in the media. It's all fake. We need to change that perception, that conversation, and we need to really support and uplift these important voices that are taking the time and who have the courage to come forth and teach you and educate you on these things that we're never going to hear about in the news. So please share this podcast, subscribe to us. That's so important. Subscribe, share these episodes, comment, like, interact with us too. So it helps raise our algorithm so we can get stories like Kevin's out. go follow our sister podcast and one of our sponsors, the Save Our Children podcast with Becky and Bridget. I just love them. They feature some of the same guests that we do here, but for them, they talk more on the parenting aspect. And so it's a really well-rounded, informative duality that we have together. And Kevin may be going on there also. So you guys will get to hear different perspectives and in different sides of his story than what you heard here. And then also go on Telegram if you guys aren't already and follow Hatch Truth. Hats off to them. I really support what they're doing. They're one of my favorite Telegram pages. I went and got some of their merchandise just because I love what they're doing. I love what they're promoting. They're the fastest growing truth community on there. And they've been so supportive of the work that we're doing here, which just means the world to me. And I do not profit off of this, but I have all of their stuff linked below. And they actually offered our listeners a discount just from the goodness of their heart because they're really proud of what we're doing. You can enter TIP, the Imagination Podcast 1, into their discount code line, and you can receive a discount on their merch. And I like to pay attention with my money, my energy, my time, and my devotion to whatever I'm looking at and consuming to good people, places, things, and businesses that are in alignment with me. And it was awesome that this amazing channel was so supportive of all the survivors that we've had on in the stories and just the vision that we have. So please go support them too. It'd mean the world to me. And you guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. It means the world to me. I didn't know so many people would care when I first started this podcast, and it just blows me away how many of you do. It gives me so much hope. And please connect with Kevin in any way, shape, or form. Uplift him, share this episode, go back and watch his other episode, tag us on Instagram, on social media. And thank you guys so much for listening. And Kevin, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much, Emma.
Absolutely. We're going to have you on again. We'll bring you on again and talk about stuff other than just your story. I was talking to Molly the other day. I'm like, we should bring both you and Kevin on an episode.
Yeah, like do like a three-way thing and stuff and see. Yeah, I was saying that to her as well. It'd be a good idea to do that, definitely.
Yeah. So we'll have you back, Kevin. But thank you guys so much for listening. Kevin, thank you for being here. And we will see you guys next week.